Going to the theaters is rare for me these days, but nevertheless, it's a treat each time. There's just something about going to watch a film by yourself. You're able to react with absolute freedom. You don't have to tread lightly and hold back laughter or tears at the parts that pull at your heart because of someone next to you. And watching films is a way that I personally learn how to observe and identify emotions, to feel them in full, and practice empathy with characters in a setting that feels comfortable and safe for me. With that being said, I'm going to try and sort out my thoughts about Belle, the newest work of Hosoda Mamoru, who's also directed famous works like The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Summer Wars, Wolf Children, The Boy and the Beast, and Mirai, all of which I thoroughly enjoyed. Also, I'm not sure what constitutes a spoiler because I feel like that depends on each person. So I'm just gonna give a disclaimer as a precaution that I will probably be spoiling a handful of things here and there. So if you haven't watched it yet, you should probably go do that first. Anyway, a quick summary of Belle. So Suzu is a high school student who grows up really loving music, singing, writing songs, but unfortunately goes through the loss of her mother, who was basically her main support and inspiration. And Suzu discovers a new virtual social networking system called You that allows her to interact as a unique Azu, which is a digital avatar synchronized with her sensations, cognition, preferences, etc., but doesn't necessarily reveal her actual identity. She becomes the famous and beautiful Belle, who becomes known for her singing and journeys through this virtual world while also learning to cope with the real world. And as the title sort of alludes, Belle is a sci fi fantasy twist on Beauty and the Beast. So if you grew up watching Beauty and the Beast, you'll probably be able to recognize some of the similarities in the rebranded characters, settings, and themes. Now, my favorite films are ones that come full circle or weave a common thread throughout the story or incorporate a lot of dichotomy and rich symbolism, which I think this film had most of. So I'm going to try and identify and analyze different themes that I noticed throughout Belle. First, online presence versus reality. I think one of the more obvious messages and themes of Belle touches on how misleading digital presence and interaction can be. And you can tell how terrified users in You are of being exposed by how they react to any possible threat to unveil their avatar, process that reveals the real life user behind the avatar. I've already sort of talked about social media and the detriment of portraying only the good in another video, so you can watch that if you're interested. But anyway, I've never been a fan of the concept of finstas and mains because it just further confirms how misleading social media is, whether it's as superficial as someone's physical appearance or as deep as someone's core character. And speaking of superficial, Suzu's avatar Belle is aesthetically very pleasing, and I could tell she was drawn by Korean illustrators, or at least influenced by them, because she has facial features that meet the classic East Asian, more specifically Korean, beauty standards. Large doe like eyes, slim nose, perfectly shaped lips, small face, long flowing hair, slender body. And by no means is Suzu herself unattractive, but I think it's safe to say that she's meant to appear as just an average looking girl, which is a stark contrast from Belle's glamorous appeal. This sort of discrepancy between online presence and reality is really, really common in our day. And while it's easy to give people flack for catfishing or misleading others, I hesitate to immediately write it off as purely bad. I think I can understand. We humans adore beauty. We value it, we want to imagine and create a world full of it, even if that world is virtual. What might be interpreted as deceit can also be someone's way of coping with the broken reality that they live in, an escape from the real world of hurt and pain into a dreamed world of beauty and recognition. We would be lying to ourselves if we say we haven't done that in some way, shape, or form. There's a part of a book that I'm reading right now that says we all wear masks, figuratively, of course, although now that's pretty literal, and that no one can truly be honest in being themselves, especially not with others. And I think it's because at the core, you and I are different people, no matter how similar our tendencies, personalities, or pasts are. I will never fully understand exactly how you feel, and vice versa. There's sort of a default loneliness that comes from simply existing, which leads me to my next point, the significance of music and how it brings unity among the most unlikely, or likely, depending on how you view it, of souls. I think music is spiritual. It cuts to the core of people and completely bypasses reason. And I found that music is often a tool that allows people to open their heart space without having to articulate how or why. When Suzu enters you as Belle for the first time, it happens in a very Disney princess musical style, like wondrously looking around the new world, trying to navigate the novelty of environment and emotion through song. As mentioned in the brief summary, Suzu grew up with music, and that becomes a part of her identity, and it's a part that she loses touch with once her mom dies. We see the gradual journey of Suzu finding her voice again through various instances, singing to enter the world of you, singing to invite the beast into warmth, singing to gain credibility with the beast and call him back from his mistrust, singing to bring unity despite the diversity of the users in you, highlighting the beauty of hearing different voices singing the same song. I think we feel moved by choirs and other groups of people that sing together because it's the perfect balance of being able to retain individuality through a multitude of tones, textures, and harmonies, while also expressing the concept of community through more unified aspects of the song, such as lyrics and timing. Next theme I took note of was the blurred lines between heroes and so called villains. I think the older I get, the more I'm able to adopt a more gracious attitude towards characters meant to be antagonistic. I think it's worth discussing villains and their search for good, their desire for beauty, power, respect, companionship, usually in form of some animal sidekick. These are all good things. The evil queen in Snow White is just one example that comes to mind. For the longest time, she feels validated by the fact that she's the fairest of them all, until a newer, fairer maiden, Snow White, comes to threaten that sense of identity. And while most people certainly don't condone the evil queen's way of reassuming that highest position of beauty, and I don't think they should, sometimes I wonder how much of her hatred, jealousy, and vanity come from a place of self defense. The same goes for the beast in both the original film and in Belle. The line that distinguishes hero and villain kind of blurs over the course of the film with the beast and arguably disappears once the audience finds out who the beast really is and why he acts the way he does. On the other hand, the character Justin, who I think was supposed to be a spin off of Gaston, unsurprisingly turns out to be sort of a jerk, despite his claims to be a herald of justice. I've been seeing more flip of perspective stories and films that attempt to get people to see the painted villain's past and understand their worldview. And I think it's an interesting take, but I would just hope that it doesn't progress into tolerating or even embracing things that are blatantly evil. Although maybe these stories are a sign of what's already happening. I don't know. Anyway, as the beast's identity and story are unveiled, pun absolutely intended, we're able to see the theme of sacrifice really play out. The first instance of sacrifice is Suzu's mom saving another person's child in a heavy rainstorm at the cost of her own life and leaving Suzu to have to navigate life on her own now. We see Belle being physically protected by the beast, her risking being unveiled for the sake of protecting him, and all of this is happening in the virtual world of you. But even in the real world, we see parallel instances of sacrifice. Kei protecting Tomo at the cost of taking on the verbal abuse and threats of their father, and then later on, Suzu physically protecting Kei and Tomo from their father. I think Suzu comes to terms with her mother's decision to save the other child when she herself is put in the same situation of helpless children who just really need saving. And this leads me to talk about the power of good in the form of unconditional love, kindness, forgiveness, and hope. I think all of these things are characteristic of the pinnacle of humanity, or at least what we humans dream and long for. Tying back to the scene of Suzu singing as herself in front of everyone in you, she risks total rejection and criticism in order to possibly be loved in her truest form. Not as Belle, not as the beautiful, glamorous girl everyone expected her to be, but a very ordinary girl with a story of her own. Suzu as Belle softens the beast's edges, using kindness as an avenue for the beast to let down his walls. And her relationship with her father is also mended as she places herself as a sacrifice the same way her mother did. Belle's opening and ending scenes contrast really nicely, since the opening scene is basically just introducing the framework of Yu's virtual reality, while the ending scene is of Suzu in real life with the people she cherishes the most. A cloud hangs in the sky, just shy of completely covering the sun, but not enough for it to stop the rays from coming through the mist, representing hope, the thing that pushes us to live one more day. If there was anything I personally took from this film, it's probably the reinforcement of how much we as humans want beauty in ourselves and in the world, but also how much we need saving from ourselves and the world. There's such a divine thing about taking the ugliest bruises and hurts and choosing to create beauty out of it, to hope for days when the storm will stop and the sun will once again shine through.